Hi, welcome back to my kitchen. It is September, which means it's the beginning of September, and summer's not officially over with yet. And it's hot, and it's way too early to be putting on our flannel shirts and our hoodies and our warm fuzzy socks and building a fire and just, embracing the beauty of fall. But there's hope. Anyways, I'm going to fix some pumpkin bread today. And I thought maybe you guys could just hang out with me while I did this. Now, let me just agree with you all that the pumpkin spice, all the things has just gotten way out of hand. Like, stop already. Stop. We don't need pumpkin spice cornflakes in our life. Anyways, pumpkin bread, however, is a very old traditional recipe. Pumpkin is a very old traditional food that Americans have been cooking one form or another since before we were actually even a country. The first recorded pumpkin recipe known dates back to the 1680s. And John Quincy Adams, who was president from 1825 to 1829, actually included one of his favorite recipes, pumpkin bread, into the presidential archives. So it's very old-fashioned, it's very traditional, and it's very much a comfort food. Now, pumpkin is, again, an ingredient that can be used in savory recipes or in sweet recipes. So we're making a bit of a treat with the pumpkin bread, but the little tiny bit in the can I'm going to have left over past the cup that I need for the recipe is going to go into the pot roast that's right behind you. So you guys be careful. If you back up, that's a hot crock pot there. All right, so let's go make some pumpkin bread and let's get fall kicked off with a bang. Okay, so I'm preheating the oven to 350 degrees, and I am going to spray my loaf pan, and then I want some parchment paper just on the bottom of it to keep the loaf from sticking to the bottom of the pan. And so I'm just rough cutting, roughly fitting. Wunderbar, perfect. Okay, so let me spray down my pan. I'll put the paper in the bottom to keep it from sticking. And y'all spray your pans over the sink because you're the one that's got to mop the floor if you get that all over the floor. All right, so done and done. Set that aside. Okay. So now, as with most things I make, it may be way different than the way you make it. That's fine. This is, I've seen so many variations of pumpkin bread, it kind of boggles the mind, but this is the one I use. So I'm going to start out with my dry ingredients. I've got 1.5 cups of flour in here, and I'm going to add in here a cup of sugar. Ow. So that's 1/2 cup, and that's a cup. I've also put a couple of tablespoons of flour in this other little bowl, which we'll be using later. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Okay, so 1.5 cups of flour, a cup of sugar. We're going to add in a teaspoon of baking soda, and we're going to add in about 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Now, this is a quick bread. Don't let that fool you. It's going to be baking for about an hour. The reason, what constitutes a quick bread is any kind of a bread that you make that doesn't use yeast has a leavening factor. So the more you know, now you know that. Okay, so we've got our sugar, baking soda, salt, and we're going to add some pumpkin pie spice, which I happen to have. Usually I have to whip up my own because I don't have the actual combined spice, but I do this time so it works. So we're going to use a teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice, or more or less, depending on your taste. You do you. And then we're going to whisk this all together. Make sure that you've got that combined well. Now later in the fall, when the pumpkins are ripe and ready for picking, I usually grab several of these sugar pumpkins, what you use to make pie filling with, and I fix my own pumpkin puree to use in recipes down the line. And I'll be doing that this fall too. God willing that the pumpkin season is better than it was last year. All right, so now we're going to add our wet ingredients, and we're going to put it right here in the middle. So we've got 2 eggs. Look at that. Don't get eggshell in it. And we're going to put a cup of pumpkin puree. You can also use mashed sweet potatoes in this bread, and it's wonderful. Just saying. Okay, and then we're gonna need a 3/4 of a cup of vegetable oil. Now, if you don't want to put the oil in, you can actually substitute applesauce for the oil, and it would work. There are some recipes that call for shortening or butter. This recipe is a really good one to freeze. So if I was making a bigger batch for like 2 loaves, I could have 1 loaf for the menfolk to snack on for the next few days, and the other one I would just slice up and wrap in individual slices in cling wrap, and then pull one out of the freezer and stick it in little dude's lunch, and by the time he eats lunch it would be thawed out and wonderfully fresh and lovely. Okay, and then I also want a little splash of the vanilla extract here. So I'm going to put about, not a full teaspoon, I don't think, about like so. Okay. And then I'm going to just stir this up until it's just combined. I'm not needing to over blend this because it's not a cake, it's a bread. I know that probably shakes the camera. I don't have a professional videographer yet. Can you believe? Oh, we do the best we can. All right, so we're just getting all of those ingredients combined. You don't need to bring out the big mixer. You don't need to get a food processor going. You do need to be as neat as you can, Linda. I'm talking to you. Okay, so there's that. All right. Now, here's where I am going to add a little bit of an extra ingredient in here. I'm actually going to put chocolate chips in here because the menfolk love me that much. And that's why I needed my couple of tablespoons of flour in here. This is a little trick, let me show you. If you're adding chocolate chips to any kind of, that's probably about a 1/2 cup. Any kind of a quick bread or a brownie or something along those lines, take your chocolate chips and toss them in flour before you add them into your batter. This is going to keep it from all sinking to the bottom to where you just have a layer of chocolate mess in the bottom of your pan and nothing has remained afloat. So let me just kind of sift them out. I know I spoil the menfolk, so I do. All right, there we go. Then stir your chocolate chips in. Grab your pan that has been greased and lined at the bottom with the parchment paper. And then, voila. All right, this is going to go into the oven for about an hour, and I'll test it then, see if a knife in the middle comes out clean, and then we'll take a look at it when it's finished. Okay, so our bread baked for an hour. It's been sitting on this rack in the pan for about 10 minutes. So now I want to pop it out. Bottom. Take your parchment paper off. All right. Now we're going to let that set and cool completely before we slice it. So it's important to leave it in your pan for at least 10 minutes after you bring it out of the oven. That's going to keep it from falling down on itself once you unpan it, if that's a word. Once you remove it from the pan to let it cool completely, you do want that little bit of time to set up in there so that it doesn't just collapse down on itself after you take it out of the pan. So we're going to try to leave this alone for about 30-40 minutes, and then we'll slice it and give little dude a piece to taste it for us. Okay, so I actually videoed my slicing the bread and showing you how beautiful it was and how yummy it looks. And then when I checked the video after the fact, for some reason it had recorded that video in a portrait mode instead of a landscape mode, and then when I go to splice it together it won't work. So anyways, just pretend like this was a whole loaf at once upon a time, and after about 30 minutes of letting it cool, I went ahead and sliced it. I did manage to video little dude's reaction, as I chose him to be my product tester, and so here is his first impressions of our pumpkin bread. Pee-wee, come here. I need a product tester.
Okay.
Hey, no, not the milk.
That's good milk. Not good.
What is it?
It's like banana bread.
No, it's not banana bread.
It's chocolate bread, pretty much.
Pumpkin.
Pumpkin bread with chocolate chips.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how'd I do?
Out of 10.
Okay. Well, you enjoy that, but you still need lunch. Slow down, dude. All right, so I'm thinking by his reaction, this is actually going to be a nice little warm
Goodbye.
Well, there's our review. So anyways, I hope you guys kind of enjoyed this one, and if you have a different little fall type quick bread, let me know. Once I get some apples, we'll be making apple bread up in here. Banana bread is always well received, but this was pumpkin bread in celebration of the beginning of September. So we'll see you guys soon.